Today, with 100% more bird frame, we are going to talk about the Foundry, as the Foundry is an integral part of the game, and I haven't explained it yet, so it's pretty straightforward. Most of you have probably already figured it out, but we'll go over it anyways. Foundry can be found right over here. First thing to the right after you unlock and you're starting missions. And what the Foundry is used is to craft things. It's a pretty straightforward interface. You can sort by everything. Up here is all your different sort options. If you have something cooking, if you will, you can go to the in progress and it'll show everything you have working. If you want to just see what you can build because you have the stuff for it, you can sort it by ready building. Otherwise, you have the various slots for the different types of weapons, for your Warframes, for your Archwing, for your Sentinels, cosmetic appearances, keys, miscellaneous items. There's a bunch of different options, but we're going to go over just a couple of things just to kind of throw it off for you. Now, there's a couple of different things involved with crafting a weapon, or a frame, or anything. The first thing you have to do is you have to have the blueprint to craft something. Some of these blueprints can be found in the store, which is right up here, the little market. And at first you're going to be confused. I'm almost guaranteed, because like most people, you'll go, oh, if I want, say, a Warframe, I click on this. But wait, all of these are platinum, the real money. I don't want to pay the real money to do this. Well, first off, power to you for not wanting to pay money, but you should be ashamed for not wanting to pay money for such a nice game. Outside of that, I understand. I started this game as a free-to-player too. I didn't want to have to pay any money. Although you do have 50 starting platinum that they give you for free, that's better used to open up slots for weapons or Warframes as you can. Now, where you're going to actually want to go is down to the blueprint section, which is right underneath it. And you'll notice in here, everything is all in-game credits. Now, you should be aware that every Warframe actually requires more than just this blueprint, but in order to craft it in the long run, you will need the blueprint. Weapons are likewise situated in that they have their featured section, and then you have the actual purchasable full done weapons. Hidden in here, there are some of the starter weapons and kind of like first step up from starter weapons that can be bought from credits, which is a little bit different from the Warframe store in that sense, as most of these will be platinum still, but you do have a few credit items in here, like the Bratton and the Strun, as well as all of the various MK1 version weapons. But for the most part, where you will want to go for that is the Blueprints tab again. And these will give you access to the blueprints for the weapon, and you will have to then go find the parts you need to make the weapon. A lot of people will miss that and go to the primary or secondary or the main real money store section because it's more prominent, and then get confused. Equipment is a little bit different, as some things like components can only be bought with real money unless you want to go and farm them. But keys and drones, their blueprints are all bought in here. Now, there is something that should be mentioned about most of the items in here, that the derelict keys and the quests are all a one-time buy item. You buy it once and then you can keep reusing it. It doesn't just go away after you use it like weapon blueprints. And it'll actually stop you from rebuying it, so you don't just waste money buying it. To otherwise be noted, and we'll get into it a little bit more, every time you actually click on a blueprint, it'll pop it up with a description. If it's a weapon, it'll tell you the stats, it'll tell you Warframe stats over there as well, and it'll actually tell you what the requirements are to build this thing. To get more into building things, let's return to our Foundry so we can go over it a little bit. Now, for any given weapon, within reasons of Archwing weapons, that is not a prime weapon, you will just have a series of material resources that you need to go out and gather. For instance, if I wanted to build a dread, I would need morphics, circuits, polymer bundles, and plastids. The organization is such: how many you have, how many are needed. It might be a little confusing for some people because you might see, okay, well, this is how many I need and this is what I have, but it's actually the other way around. What you have available from your stockpiles of slaughtering dudes and playing missions will be shown first, and then after the slash is how many are required. If you don't really care about numbers and you just want to know if you can actually build it, if it's got a check mark next to it, you're good to go. Down here you'll notice that Axiom, right here, Axiom is actually grayed out and there's no check mark because I don't have the necessary amount, 296 out of 500. Everything else you will notice is fine. The other thing to note about building weapons is that there is a credit cost associated with it on top of the resources, and then there is a time that you have to wait for it to build. A lot of these tend to be 12 hours, but a lot of other ones like to have 24 hours. So you're looking at half a day, a full day. It can be rushed for real money, but you shouldn't feel as though you absolutely have to. In the long run, you'll have so many resources and so many blueprints that you can build a blueprint while you're still using a weapon. And then after you're done with that weapon, if you don't want it anymore, you can go and take the other one out. Or if you just want to level up the new weapon, you can take it out and replace your old one with it, or add it to a new slot, however you want to, so that you don't feel like you ever have to stick with a given thing. Some weapons will require different things like formas. Most of the clan tech items is where you normally see things requiring formas, and I will get into that later in a dojo video. Some will require, also a lot of them being clan tech weapons, conveniently enough, specific items that can be crafted from blueprints, single-use blueprints that can be bought from the clan dojo, like field drawn. Some will find it's a lot easier to just wait for invasion missions, explained in the Lisette navigation video, in order to get these, as they will be completed items. So if I get a field drawn, it is just going to be a field drawn.
It will be marked on navigation.
Otherwise, I might have to go to miscellaneous, and you'll see I can build a field drawn using a bunch of field drawn samples and these other resources. But if I do it that way, I'm also waiting for 12 hours using all of these resources and then using 15,000 credits for one field drawn, as opposed to just running a mission however many times to get it. But that option is available. Your various potatoes will be craftable in here with what they use and how long they take. Extractors can be crafted in here. Your formas, anything related to your, pretty much anything that be crafted in general, including keys and companions. If you have any sentinel blueprints, can be crafted in here. The various appearance items, which if you buy them from the store, of course you won't have to craft them, but if you get them from an alert, it'll come as a blueprint, like a Menticide Nyx helmet blueprint, and then you will actually have to craft that helmet in order to be able to later go on and equip it. The average new player can ignore arcane. Before they started getting rid of these, arcane helmets are the old versions of helmets that actually had stats tied to them, such as the arcane essence for a Loki, which has a power efficiency boost but reduces armor rating. So there's those, you won't find those unless you purchase them from another player in a trade at this point, so you don't have to worry so much about that. It's pretty much all just cosmetics alone. If you like how it looks, you can build it, and then you can wear it on your Warframe if you have that Warframe. Now, some weapons are slightly different, and they work more like a Warframe does, which a Warframe has the overall blueprint, such as Ash or Banshee here, and then it will have specific items instead of resources. For instance, in order to make any Warframe, I need a helmet, a chassis, and a system of that specific Warframe. How you would do this is you would then have 2 layers of crafting going on. If I wanted to build, say, an Ember Prime, I would have to have an Ember Prime chassis. And then when I have that chassis, it has its requirements and it has its 12-hour build time. The helmet has its own independent requirements and build time. And then the systems, likewise, would have its own stuff. And then after I have those 3 built, I could then use the overall blueprint, which normally, as far as I have figured, I mean, they haven't really messed around with it much, but it's 72 hours for a final Warframe blueprint, which is 3 days. It's not really a terrible thing. It can really kind of put some people off because they don't like waiting that long, but the idea behind making you wait is so that you're more tempted to buy with your real money platinum and fast forward through the wait. It's completely reasonable to just wait. I mean, if you're really the kind of person where like, I don't want to play this game until I have this Warframe, the nice part about it being free is you can just go do something else for 3 days, go outside, play some sports, watch TV or whatever, and then it'll be there waiting for you when you come back. It doesn't expire after it's crafted. So, likewise with some of these, all of the Warframes, where you have these crafting within crafting, some of the weapons are prime weapons. Now, the slight difference here is the weapon components, such as the burst-on prime barrel and stock and receiver, don't need to be crafted, but they do need to be found. And as mentioned in the travel video, prime items drop from primarily void missions. Which void mission, go to the wiki. It'll be a lot easier than me trying to explain it, especially since they can change tables, then this information would be outdated and wrong to tell you anyways. So as you would get, say I'm playing whichever void mission, and I finished the void mission, I have a burst on prime barrel. I'm like, alright, I got a burst on prime barrel. I still need to find the main blueprint. Prime weapons, their parts can be traded, so I can trade people prime barrels and stocks and stuff like that. So if you're into the trading or the purchasing from other players bit, and you have the platinum to spend, since most people always require the platinum in order to trade, you can go that route instead of farming for them. Otherwise, you farm for them to drop, and after you get them, then you keep going until you have all the stuff to craft your thing, and then you use it. Pretty much all these blueprints are all one-time uses, which for the most part you never end up really having to recraft things, with the exception of secondary weapons, mostly secondary weapons I should say. You will have things like the axe, the AKs, and what this is just kind of shorthand for akimbo, meaning you're using 2. So Ak Bronco is using 2 Broncos, Ak Magnus is using 2 Magnuses, Ak Vasto is using 2 of the Vasto revolvers. And in most cases, these will actually require you to build 2 copies of that normal singular thing, such as building a Magnus, which, if I scroll down here, you can see the Magnus has all of its own resources required, and time and credits. And I would build 2 of these, and you can't run them at the same time. You can only build 1 of any given item at a time. So if you have 2 blueprints for the Magnus, you won't be able to start the second blueprint until the first is done. So there's a little bit of contention there between some people, but it's just a little bit of a wait. It's not really a huge deal. Well, at least for me, it's not a huge deal, so I'm not too worried about it. But if I took the time to build 2 of those, I could then combine them into the Ak Magnus. Now, a thing of note when it comes to this specific type of crafting here. If I have a Magnus, which I do, I already have a Magnus built, and I have it ranked up to 30. If I ever craft another Magnus, that Magnus will start off at rank 0. So keep that in mind. If you end up really liking a gun, but you sell it for whatever reason, you can always recraft it, but you will have to go through that process of re-leveling it to top. The other thing to be wary about is if you potato something, that will not carry over to future versions. So if I have a potatoed Magnus, I put a catalyst into it, the blue potato, and I leveled it up to 30 again, so it's, super cool. I got it with its specific polarity I wanted on it. If I decide to make an ACK Magnus, using that Magnus, it loses that potato. It loses that extra polarity slot. It'll go back down to rank 0. If I make another Magnus after that fact, it will just be a normal, non-potatoed, unranked Magnus. So keep that in mind. It more specifically happens in frequency with sidearms, because you get a lot of the akimbos. You have, dual pistols that happen a lot more. I mean, Sestra, dual Sestra. Furies, there's dual Furies. There's dual Magnuses. There's a lot of dual weapons when it comes to the handguns. This doesn't happen as much with the rifles, although there are some rifles that require you to sacrifice another type of weapon. For instance, the miter, which is crafted by finding the different resource kind of items, like the barrel and the handle and the blades and all that. If I found all those and I made a miter, if I ever want to make this Pantera, or Panthera, however you feel like saying it, it actually requires a miter. And it also requires the Hiko, or some throwing stars that are a secondary weapon, in the process of making it. So if I decide I want to do that, and I already have a miter built, and I have it potatoed, and I really like it, what might be a better option is to just craft a second miter to use as a sacrifice to make the Pantera. Because that new miter won't have anything special about it, so you will still keep the original gun that you had with your formas into it and your potatoes into it, because you no longer have to sacrifice it, because you now have made a new version of it to sacrifice. So that's just a little thing to keep in mind, and one of the only real big quirks when it comes to crafting things is that if you sacrifice something, it's not going to retain it. It doesn't carry forward. Now, as I said, if you wanted to, you could pay using your platinum, real monies, in order to boost the speed and kind of just fast forward straight to something being completed. And it's up to you, really. And while we're in the Foundry, I'll talk a little bit about Argon crystals. It's a crafting resource, but it's a little different from other resources, as they only drop in the void and they have a shelf life to them. All other resources, if you get it, it'll just stay there. It'll wait for you to decide to do something with it. Which is good, because a lot of times that means by the time you really get into crafting some heavy-duty stuff, you'll have a ton of resources. In the case of Argon crystals, they go away after 24 hours. So you're going to want to make sure that if you have something specific that you want to build, like say I wanted to build this Corvus for my Archwing, I'm going to want to make sure that I get all of its component parts before I really bother with the Argon crystals, unless I'm running void missions on a daily basis, so that when I do get the Argon crystal I need, I don't need to worry about it expiring. Outside of that, there isn't a whole lot of complexity going on with the Foundry crafting system. That's generally all there is to it. Blueprints that aren't found in the market might be found in some of the dojos, which I'll go over when I go over dojos. Warframe blueprints are normally found either as quest rewards or through boss drops. And when I say Warframe blueprints, I'm meaning the parts, like the chassis blueprint, the helmet blueprint, and the system blueprint. The overall blueprints are pretty much always just bought, in the case of the non-quest Warframes, from the market for normal credits. If you do so choose to be a paying member of sorts and buying platinum, which through login rewards you normally can get pretty decent deals, as they frequently offer 20%, 50%, and even 70% off your next platinum purchase. The benefit, if you will, of buying something with real money from the store is it's not just that thing. So if I decide to buy a Vauban from the store, it gives you the Warframe. You don't have to worry about crafting any of the parts of it or any of the blueprints. It just flat out gives you that Warframe. And it also will give you a slot for that Warframe to reside in, so you no longer have to worry about, I only have 2 slots, because you bought the Warframe, it came with its own one. And it will also come with a potato installed already, meaning you have double the points to spend for your mods, which I went over in the mod video. So there is a little bit of a benefit to just buying it flat out with platinum, but for the average player, it might be more practical to just wait for reactors and catalysts to come up as alerts, and then through trading off and selling off your prime parts that you don't need, getting platinum to fund buying more Warframe slots and more weapon slots. Prices for slots are not that bad. If you ever need to see how many slots you currently have, you go to your menu, you go to escape, and then you go to inventory. In here, you will see right off the bat, it says buy an extra slot. For a Warframe, it's 20 platinum for a single slot. That's not bad. You start with 50 platinum for free. If you wanted to, you could buy 2 Warframe slots with that. I would recommend holding on to that starting 50 platinum. It's not tradable, but that way, if you decide you want another Warframe, you can then use it to add a slot. Likewise, weapons will give you 2 slots for 12, unless this was changed at some point. It's always given me 2 slots. I know it says buy extra slot, but it always, for me, has given 2. So unless things change later on, 12 platinum will get you 2 weapon slots. So you could go 1 extra Warframe, 4 extra weapon slots, 2 extra Warframes, or you could just go all extra weapon slots with that initial 50 platinum that they give you just for playing the game. Now, if you scroll all the way to the end, which will be harder and harder as you get more stuff and you keep buying more slots, you'll see here I have 2 open slots. If I didn't have any open slots, there would be items in these things and it wouldn't say open. And if I tried to pull something out of the Foundry, it would have an alert that says, hey, you don't have an open slot. Do you want to buy one? And it'll automatically pop up the, purchase 2 weapon slots for 12 platinum. And you can click yes right there and it'll open up the slots for you and automatically pull it in there. Sentinels, likewise 2 slots for 12, although it's deceiving because every Sentinel, which is a companion type, will come with its own weapon. So you get a Sentinel and a weapon. And this is for when you craft them as well. So when you buy an extra slot, you're really just buying a pair of slots for 1. So since they come in the pair, that's generally how that works. Appearance items, resource items, extractors, the gear items, keys, Archwing, currently Archwing components. None of those actually require slots, so you don't have to worry about buying more for those. This could be changed in the future. I don't know. I'm not a psychic. I can't predict the future. But that is pretty much all there is to the Foundry and crafting. Some aspects of it I'll get more into a little later, such as the clan technologies that come from the dojo, or the companions themselves, even though they are all crafted in a very similar way. Even Prime gear, it's crafted in the same way, it's just what you need to go into it is a little bit different. The most complex thing you have is the Warframes with their 3 mini blueprints that combine to the big blueprint, or some of the fancier weapons that will have you taking 2 individual weapons and using a bigger blueprint to combine them into a new one. As always, if there's any questions or anything I can do to help better explain things, or you have any comments or corrections, feel free to leave them in a comment on the video and I will try to address them or go over them, or if it's a big enough issue, create another video. That's it for the edition of Foundry. If you have any topics you would like me to go over that I haven't already covered in this or other videos, feel free to also leave a comment and I will do my best to try to go through and make a video kind of explaining to the best that I can of that. Until next time, keep slaying stuff.